Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in this world. This is John West back again with Japanese business and economy. As I said, this is John West back again with Japanese business and economy, and I'm here for our third class out of the 14 classes in our course together. I'll be talking about the part A of this class, which is about Japan's post-war economic comeback, Japan's post-war resurgence, and in particular, I'll be talking about the role of international trade. And in the second part of the course, I'll be talking about the role of Japanese companies in Japan's post-war economic comeback. Now, international trade has played a very important role in Japan's development after World War II. As you can see in this pie chart, the US and China are very important trading partners for Japan. Both the US and China are the destination for 19% or so of Japan's exports. Now, I've said that international trade has played a very important role in Japan's development, but how does trade actually help development? Now, free and open trade offers many benefits for every country. The first benefit is that when you practice free and open trade, you specialize in what you are best at. This is what economists call comparative advantage. And by specializing in what you're best at, you are being the most efficient possible. And your economy becomes the most prosperous possible. The second benefit of free and open trade is economies of scale. What this means is that the more you produce, the more efficient you become. And you see in this little chart here that as the quantity of output increases from Q1 to Q3, the average cost per unit goes down. This is what we call economies of scale. And for most countries, as they export onto the global market, their total production increases and they enjoy declining average costs of production. The third benefit that free and open trade offers is that companies can learn global best practices. When you are competing on world markets, you have to be as efficient as other companies. When you are competing on world markets, you have to satisfy the world's consumers. And so by being an export-oriented company, you naturally adopt global best practices and you become globally efficient. The fourth benefit of free and open trade for a country like Japan is that exports provide revenues that enable Japan to pay for its imports. Now, we discussed earlier that Japan is a country that suffers from a lack of natural resources, a lack of energy, and a lack of agricultural potential, and it needs to import these products, to import natural resources, energy, agricultural products. And when you import these products, you need export revenues to finance that. And so Japan's exports are very important to the country in terms of financing the country's imports. Now, I've spoke strongly about the importance of free and open trade for a country's development, but we must recognize that Japan did not always practice free trade. In 1945, after the end of the Second World War, Japan was a low-tech country. You can see in this photo, this was Japan at the time. It looks more like Vietnam or China today. But in 1945, although Japan was a low-tech country, it wanted to become a high-tech country. So it came up with a strategy to become a high-tech country. What it did was it protected its infant industries to give them a chance to climb the development technology ladder, to give them a breathing space to climb the development and technology ladder. So how did Japan protect its infant industries? Its protection took several forms. Firstly, there were restrictions on imports. Companies like Toyota benefited from the fact that there were restrictions on the import into Japan of motor vehicles from the US and Europe. There are also restrictions on foreign investment. And so once again, a company like Toyota benefited from the fact that it was difficult for a company like Chrysler, Ford, or General Motors to invest in Japan. Companies like Toyota and others also benefited from subsidies and privileged access to bank finance. Also, the exchange rate was kept artificially low. We would say today that Japan manipulated its exchange rate. Japan also copied Western technologies, did reverse engineering, bought technology, and at times practiced intellectual property theft. Now, all of these policies that Japan implemented were very helpful in the development of its manufacturing sector. Japan's manufacturing sector became overall very competitive on global markets, especially in the motor vehicle and electronics industries. Companies like Toyota, Nissan, Honda, Sony, Panasonic became very competitive on world markets thanks to the protection that these infant industries enjoyed in the early days of Japan's post-war development. Now, not only did Japan catch up to Western companies, companies like Toyota also developed new management concepts, new management ideas, which meant that in many respects, they became even more efficient than Western companies. Toyota is perhaps the classic example of a Japanese company that, in fact, advanced much more than Western companies at the time. Now, one of Japan's leading management concepts is the concept of Kaizen, or continuous improvement.
Kaizen translates as continuous improvement. As no process can ever be declared perfect, there is always room for improvement. One of the keys to Toyota's success lies in its continuous improvement. Between 3 and 4% of Toyota's annual turnover is reinvested in research and development. Every component of Toyota materials handling equipment is designed with the customer in mind and incorporates exclusive and durable technologies such as Toyota's SAS, system of active stability that offers improved safety and productivity, and Toyota's AC squared power system that gives impressive power to increase productivity. Also, at the cutting edge of innovation, BT's power drive system that increases the drive system's reliability, and the BT tilting cab, offering greater safety and reduced stress during each operation. The Toyota Production System, TPS, monitors production lines in order to create improvements, so the right quantity of parts is delivered just in time. Created by Toyota, this system also means that the products are efficiently manufactured to demand. Toyota Material Handling, stronger together.
So, some fascinating insights into Toyota's production processes, how Toyota not only caught up to Western companies, but how Toyota invented new management ideas like Kaizen. Now, today we might think that Kaizen, or continuous improvement, seems pretty obvious. But at the time, it wasn't obvious. Toyota was revolutionary in coming up with these ideas, and Toyota, in fact, has had much influence over the operations of many different types of Western companies.
I'm Alex Berman, and you're watching Selling Breakdowns. Whenever you buy a complex piece of equipment, such as a TV or a car, do you ever wonder, How exactly it all came together? Well, ever since the Industrial Revolution, that how has been a vital question for many businesses. Today, we're going to look at how in post-war Japan, Toyota helped to create one of the smartest production systems that we have, named Just in Time. We'll look at how it works and how you can apply the philosophy and practices to many other areas of your business. After World War II, Japan faced some difficult problems. They didn't have a lot of cash, resources were scarce, and there wasn't a lot of free land to expand factories. However, Taiichi Ono at Toyota managed to turn these problems into advantages by slowly creating the just-in-time system. The idea didn't come all at once. It's more that through the 50s and 60s, various changes were implemented and improved until the 70s, where the wider world began to realize the benefits and adopted a similar approach. So, what is just-in-time? The philosophy is to make the entire production system only work with what it needs and to minimize wait times between each stage. The biggest savings is normally around inventory. Before just-in-time, a company would keep a warehouse filled with the parts and raw materials it needed. When supplies were getting low, they'd reorder when they had just enough to keep going until the new delivery came. But Toyota realized, what if you just keep making that same order as soon as the next one arrives? That way, you never need to keep this stockpile of spare parts. The cost savings were huge since warehousing is seriously expensive. You need to pay for massive space, power, staff, security, and for all the parts that are just sitting there waiting, not making you money or adding value to your product. And this is the core of just-in-time. You look at each area of production and ask, is this adding value to the product? If it isn't, maybe there's a better way to do it. You cut everything down to its most efficient form with almost no room for error, which is where the risk in just-in-time lies. Toyota used Japan's relatively small size to its advantage. You could rely on suppliers delivering exactly on time because they only had to travel small distances. This is important because if you get problems with supply, it can shut down the whole system. But it's normally worth the risk because the savings are huge on inventory and staff costs. More than this, though, you're forced to create a working philosophy that there's no room for error. You don't have spare parts or spare time, so you have to make sure everything functions perfectly. Often, efficiency comes at the cost of quality, but not in this case. In just-in-time, you're forced into quality in order to be efficient. That's why it's applicable to many other areas of business. The best way to think about it is if we simplify everything to two approaches, just-in-time and just-in-case. With just-in-case, you're trying to minimize risk by always giving yourself a buffer. You'll carry extra stock so you can swap out faulty items. You'll overstaff certain areas because they've occasionally had too much work to deal with. You'll support a service that just a few customers ask for. With just-in-time, you don't simply cut these areas and cross your fingers that nothing bad happens. No, you work out how you can avoid them happening in the first place. Because this is money that's wasted unless a bad thing happens, you're effectively investing in mistakes. Better quality control means staff can trust the stock that they have so they don't need a backup. As for workloads, the only reason one department is hit by a workload that they can't handle is because there's not enough visibility between departments. If your sales team know the capacity of production and its current status, then they won't put in an order that can't be filled. And as for offering a service with limited customer appeal, well, maybe you cut it out completely, or you just find a way to merge it with other services so the resources it requires are absolutely minimal. When done well, the just-in-time philosophy should be good for morale too, because the whole point of it is telling your staff, I'm trusting you to perform consistently. And I think most of us respond well to that kind of respect. Want to learn more about business theory and history? Be sure to like and subscribe to be notified of our next set.
So some fascinating insights into Toyota's just-in-time system of management.
Toyota knows how to make cars. It does it so well, it became the first company to produce more than 10 million a year. Its success is rooted in a special system and began what's now known as lean manufacturing, an ethos emulated by companies around the world to make products faster, cheaper, and better. Here's how Toyota changed the way we make things. Following the Second World War, Japan was left in a precarious economic position.
Steel and other metals are scarce.
Already disadvantaged by lacking natural resources, materials were hard to come by, and companies had to be creative to compete. Toyota's founder, Sakichi Toyoda, had started a loom business, but it was his son Kichiro who founded the motor company in 1937. They were used to working within narrow margins. As the shortage of materials increased during the war, the number of headlamps on its Model K truck was reduced to one, and it only had brakes on one of the axles. The turning point for Toyota's production system would come in the early 50s, when Kiichiro's cousin Eiji would travel to the US with a veteran loom machinist, Taiichi Ono. They visited Ford's River Rouge plant in Michigan and were impressed by the scale of the operation, but knew that in cash-strapped Japan, companies didn't have the resources for such a system. Having months' worth of stock sitting in a warehouse would tie up precious capital they didn't have. Instead, what truly impressed Ono was a visit to a supermarket, a Piggly Wiggly, according to legend. Japan didn't really have self-service stores at this point, and he was struck by the way customers could choose exactly what they wanted, when they wanted. He decided to model his production line on a similar idea. With the supermarket formula, only enough parts were produced in the first phase to replace what was used in the second, and so on. This is where the just-in-time system really took shape. Toyota was able to eliminate much of the waste in Ford's system, making smaller numbers of parts to be used when it needed them, allowing the company to operate on a tighter budget. As part of this, Ono developed Kanban, a sign-based scheduling method which shows goods in production, and goods out. It's now seen as a precursor to barcodes. Ono and Toyota also noticed that American car companies were still employing many of Henry Ford's early production techniques. They kept operations at full tilt in order to maximize efficiencies of scale, but then had to repair defective cars after they rolled off the line. Ono believed this caused more problems and didn't encourage workers or machines to stop making the mistake. So he placed a cord above every station, which any worker could pull to stop the entire assembly if they spotted a problem. The whole team would work on it to prevent it from happening again. As teams identified more problems, the number of errors began to drop dramatically. Combined with a culture of continuous incremental improvement called Kaizen, the Toyota production system built a brand known for making reliable and affordable cars. But Toyota was also getting good at producing cars quickly. In 1962, the company had produced 1 million vehicles. By 1972, they'd produced 10 million. It was around that time that the efficiencies of their factories enabled Toyota to produce a car every 1.6 man-hours, much lower than their competitors in the US, Sweden, and Germany. And as the oil crises of the decade sent gas prices higher, cheap-to-run Japanese cars became much more appealing to Americans, whose powerful but gas-guzzling vehicles suddenly became very expensive to run. Today, Toyota has made over 250 million vehicles. Others have looked to them to learn the lessons of lean, combining craft with mass production, avoiding waste while striving for constant improvement. Boeing is perhaps the most famous, restructuring a plant to better suit TPS. Intel is another long-time lean ambassador and is exploring the principles in the context of AI and the Internet of Things. A Canadian hospital even used Toyota's system to decrease wait times in its ER. The Toyota production system changed not just how cars are made globally, but how we approach making things full stop. It also showed that there's always a better way to make a product.
So another fascinating look into Toyota. And of course, what we learn there is that not only has Toyota revolutionized the way it does business, it's revolutionized the way that many companies do business. And whether you heard the examples of Intel, Boeing, and even a Canadian hospital who have been inspired by Japan, by Toyota's management methods. Now, in addition to becoming extremely efficient and inspirational to the whole world, Toyota has also become a company which is very important for sustainable development and tackling climate change. In particular, its hybrid technology is very important for improving fuel efficiency in cars.
Giving unparalleled fuel efficiency and awesome driving performance with highly responsive handling. That's the innovative Toyota hybrid system. Our hybrid system keeps evolving through continuous design and development. When a Toyota hybrid vehicle stops, all units cease operation and there is no wasteful consumption of energy. When starting to drive, a compact, lightweight, high-performance motor is used for smooth, quiet propulsion. During low load driving, the motor is operated via appropriate control of battery power by the power control unit, thus achieving superior fuel efficiency. Motor drive is further augmented by engine power for smooth acceleration, featuring a dynamic force engine. The combination of VVTIE for lightning-fast changes in valve timing and high-speed combustion technology produces a quiet startup and more output, all the time giving fantastic improvements in fuel efficiency. During engine startup, this technology momentarily boosts battery output for a seamless merging of motor and engine drive, creating controllable acceleration for perfect handling. For normal driving, a power split device divides engine power between driving and power generation by the generator. This innovative hybrid system makes EV driving possible at a wider range of speeds, allowing the engine to be stopped even at high speed. The result is even better fuel efficiency and quieter driving. When decelerating, the vehicle's wheels turn the motor and the generated power is collected in the battery for reuse. Toyota hybrid vehicles operate by combining motor drive and engine drive within an efficient revolution range. The engine is stopped whenever possible. What's more, energy that used to be wasted is now reused to achieve peerless fuel efficiency, outstanding environmental performance, and highly responsive handling. The innovative Toyota hybrid system flawlessly combines these two elements.
So Toyota's hybrid technology for improved fuel efficiency, for sustainable development, and a sustainable planet. Now, I've deliberately spent quite a bit of time on Toyota because Toyota really is Japan's leading company. Now, when you are making your student presentations on your favorite Japanese company, if you are interested in Toyota, I can only encourage you to make a presentation on this company. You can, of course, pick up material that I've presented here. But there is so much to learn about Toyota. I also encourage you to do further research on this company, which is Japan's leading company. Now, what we've been talking about over the last short while is that Japan's policy of protecting, of helping its infant industries was very effective in the development of Japan's manufacturing sector. Manufacturing companies like Toyota, Nissan, Honda, Panasonic, and Sony received assistance from the Japanese government, but at the same time had to compete on world markets. And by this combination, they were able to become very efficient and among the world's leading companies. The same cannot be said for Japan's services and agricultural sectors. And the reason is Japan's services and agricultural sectors received assistance from the government, but they were inward looking. They were focused on the domestic market. They were not competing on world markets, and therefore they did not raise their levels of efficiency and innovation to that of global best practices. This is an interesting photo here of a Japanese farmer. And of course, Tokyo, in many ways, is the world's most sophisticated and advanced city. But as you travel around the rural countryside of Japan, sometimes you think you might be in Southeast Asia. Its agricultural sector is not at all the same as the manufacturing sector or Japan's leading cities. Its agricultural sector is quite backward and inefficient. Another aspect of Japan's agricultural sector is that Japanese farmers
The average
today,
age of a rice farmer in Japan is 65 years old. And I don't know if you can make out the couple working this rice field, but they're at least in their 70s. Probably a husband and wife. They finished cutting their tambo, rice field, and here they are in 30 degrees weather all day working. And he's checking me out. But it's pretty amazing. Japan's going to have a serious problem 10 years from now when basically a whole generation, because the average age is 65, you know, basically is no longer there to deal with the rice field. And the younger generation is not there. So they're actually, look, they're actually putting the straw together. They're actually probably going to be making rope or weaving this, you know, together. They're collecting it all. What if I walk up there? But I don't want to disturb them. But it's pretty amazing to see, you know, two 70-year-olds out there working their rice field in 30-degree plus weather. And, you know, this is Japan for you.
so as we've seen and as we've discussed, Japan's agricultural sector, its farming sector, is quite different from the manufacturing sector. It is very inefficient. It still receives quite high protection and assistance from the government. And as we've seen in this film, Japan's farming, agricultural sector is facing the problem of an aging group of farmers. The average age of Japanese farmers is around 65 years old. And in this YouTube, the commentator offers a pessimistic perspective on Japanese farming and agriculture. I actually think that the aging of Japanese farmers provides an opportunity for Japan's agricultural sector to become more efficient. And as farmers gradually disappear, and as young people are not so keen to work on farms, this is a great opportunity for robotics and other technologies to be brought into the farming and agricultural sectors. And we'll be looking at this issue in a few days' time when we look at the role of robotics. And so I actually see an optimistic, positive scenario for Japan's farming and agricultural sector through the introduction of robotics and technology. Now, the same story that we've been talking about for agriculture and farming could also be seen in the services sector. Japan's services sector is quite inefficient. Its productivity is about half that of the manufacturing sector. And the main reason is that Japan's services sector, like the farming sector, receives assistance, protection from the government, but it doesn't really compete on international markets. So it has not been forced to lift its efficiency, lift its innovation to that of global best practices. Now, the services sector, of course, is a vast sector of the economy. It includes finance, education, health, energy, all sorts of things, energy distribution. The retail sector is one important aspect of the services sector. And you can see here in this photo, this is what they call a mum and pop store. And it's a charming little store. And you see stores like this all around the back streets of Tokyo and other Japanese cities. But again, these are very inefficient little stores. And much more could be done to improve the efficiency of Japan's retail sector by reducing the assistance and protection that they enjoy. Now, I'd now like to show you a little YouTube. We won't watch it all, but we'll see maybe half of it, about mum and pop Japanese restaurants. Now, this little tour that we've taken through the back streets of Tokyo shows us, in fact, there are really two Japans. On the one hand, there is the Japan of Toyota and all the leading motor vehicle and electronics companies. On the other hand, in the back streets of Tokyo, you see another Japan, a Japan of family stores, family restaurants, very charming, very nice, but in fact, very efficient and more reminiscent of a Southeast Asian country than of an advanced, sophisticated, prosperous country. So this brings to an end our examination of the role of international trade in Japan's economic development, Japan's rapid economic comeback after the Second World War. And what we've seen is that international trade can play a very important role in a country's development. In the case of Japan, the Japanese government decided to protect the economy in the area of international trade. And there were two main effects to this. In the manufacturing sector, companies like Toyota, Nissan, Sony, Panasonic received protection, received assistance from the government, but at the same time competed on world markets and became very efficient and became world leaders in many ways. On the other hand, the agricultural sector and the services sector also received protection and assistance from the government, but they did not compete on world markets and they have not achieved the same level of efficiency and dynamism as the manufacturing sector. So this is in many ways the structure of the Japanese economy. Japan is a rich and prosperous country, but as a country that has a manufacturing sector which is very advanced, very sophisticated, and an agricultural and services sectors which are not very efficient at all. Now, today, Japan is gradually moving towards greater free trade. Japan is gradually removing and reducing the protection and assistance that it gives to its industries. In reality, Japan should have moved much earlier and much faster in reducing protection. The protection that the manufacturing sector received after 1990 was no longer really necessary. Japan's manufacturing sector was at that time already world-class. On the other hand, the agricultural and services sector really needed to be exposed to international competition to improve their efficiency. And Japan should have moved earlier and should have moved faster. But as I said, as we look at in a future class, Japan now is moving towards greater free trade and this is an important thing. Japan's GDP per capita, the productivity of the Japanese economy, and also the standard of living of Japanese people is only 2/3 that of the United States. And if Japan lifts the protection, lifts the assistance that it provides to its economy, especially in the agriculture and services sector, the economy would become more productive and more efficient, and Japan's GDP per capita would move higher and move closer to that of the United States. And so this is the challenge for the Japanese economy moving forward. So thank you very much for joining me for this class. It's been great to have you with me. And I look forward to being with you in my next class. And so for the moment, domo arigato, arigato gozaimasu. And so just a final word. Once again, if you have any comments, reactions, and questions on this class, don't hesitate to send me an email. I'd love to receive it from you. And of course, I'll answer it very quickly. But of course, when we get together for our class discussions in the middle of January, that's another opportunity to ask any questions about this class. So thank you once again.